Welcome to TIMFD. Today is my favorite day with your hosts, David Towner and Sam McKeown. If this podcast does speak to you, please like, share, and comment. Let your friends know all about us. And now, here's your hosts, Dave and Sam. Well, welcome back to Today is My Favorite Day. I am here again with Alexus, and if you remember from the last time, we had a very good conversation. Alexus has been through some trials and tribulations in her very young life, and she appears to have it all together, and we talked about that a little bit. But, you know, sometimes we're like ducks. We're just cruising along on top, and beneath the surface of the water, those pedals are going. We have several things we're going to talk about today that go along with life, that brings things into our life that we have to deal with. We're going to talk about some addictions, we're going to talk about some death, and we're going to talk about some things that both of us have dealt with, but this is Alexus' story today. So I also will remind you that Alexus is our children's director here at the Harbor Church, and she has Allanraysboytique, which you'll have to go online and look at the clothes and look at the stuff that she has. It's absolutely, it's adorable. It's just adorable. Fortunately, my wife has not yet discovered it because I'm sure that we'll end up sending stuff to Ukraine or Poland, because we have a grandson over there who is just a little over a year old. Mm-hmm. That's going to get expensive, isn't it?
It may.
Yeah. So we left off last time, Alexus, talking about just your parents had gone through a divorce. You went through all of those emotions and things like that. The next thing you put on your outline was your parents had some addictive behavior that started to create some issues.
They did.
Are you willing to talk about that today?
Yeah, I really think that it was a coping mechanism from the divorce. My parents had been married for over 20 years, so that's a long time to live with someone. I mentioned they had 48 children that they had fostered. They adopted 5 together. So that's a lot of children to have in your home together, and then to somehow separate and try to do your life apart. So for my mom, she had a lot of chronic illnesses, and she had been that way since I met her. She had a lot, like I could not name them all. She had a lot. So she was on a lot of prescription medication, and a lot of those medications were pain medications for when she needed management, and sleep medications when she was not able to rest. So I think for her to cope, she did take advantage of those, and she got to a place where she was definitely abusing what she was given. And yeah, it's hard to watch, and as a child to understand.
And you think it's safe. It's a prescription. The doctor gave it to me.
Exactly.
And now we're finding that we have all these lawsuits. We have all this stuff out there where drug companies are being sued, doctors are being sued, and stuff like that. And
exactly.
So, but you think it's safe. And with prescriptions, aren't they safe?
Right.
So how did she cope with it?
Well, that was pretty much it. I don't know that she really recognized that she was abusing it, and when we would bring it to her attention when she was lucid, I think that she was kind of in denial, and she thought, I didn't do that, I don't remember doing that, y'all are making this up, I was just taking a nap. And if you aren't familiar with sleep medications, specifically like Ambien, if you don't go to sleep, you do things that you are not going to remember.
Right.
And I remember some not so fun things, some scary things, and luckily she was never hurt, no one else was ever hurt, but it was not fun.
Yeah, they're finding the side effects of all that stuff are really, really, really horrible. So you said both your parents ran into some addictive behavior.
So my dad, he had always been like a blue collar worker, and every night my mom would have dinner ready, and he always had a beer with dinner. That's kind of how he unwound. And after they separated, it just kind of escalated. So he still had his beer with dinner, but he would maybe have a few more, and then slowly that would escalate to hard liquor, and it just became to where he still functioned, he still kept a job, he still was my dad, but he outside of at work, he usually was drinking.
Yeah. Today we call that functioning alcoholics.
Absolutely.
And so looking back, where you're at today with Celebrate Recovery and things like that, how do you think that would have helped them?
I don't know they would have been willing to go.
Okay.
I don't know that they would have been willing to get help or to admit that it had a power over them.
Right.
But I would like to think that one day, my dad has passed, but I would like to think that one day my mom will get to a place where she knows that they needed that. I was raised in church. I went to a Baptist church growing up, so I know that they have faith. It's just, I know that they've also seen a lot of trials, and it's sometimes hard to believe that God is still there and that he's still taking care of you. And even if you do have addictions, he's still going to see you through those as well. He
is willing to forgive and willing to move forward, but they have to come to a rock bottom place. They have to come to a place.
And even for someone on medication, it's not something you can necessarily cold turkey stop. So I think that makes it really difficult too. Just like if you would have a food addiction, you can't stop eating. So having to find a doctor that's willing to work with you to find medications that are less addictive, or that will help you with your pain management, but that you aren't going to be prescribed more than you're allowed to take, like maybe less time, not a whole month, but only a week's worth. Things like that. You would have to really be willing to do some hard work.
Right. So how do you think that's affected your view of like pain medications, alcohol, things like that?
Hugely.
Okay.
I had a baby recently, and I did not want any pain medication. I did not want any pain medication, and that was
you didn't rip your husband's arm off?
I did not.
Like that,
I didn't, thankfully. And we can talk about that a little more in depth when we get to him. But it actually, looking back, I wish I had been a little more reasonable. Like I wish I had listened a little bit more to what my doctors and nurses and husband were telling me, and not held on so strong, because really I needed it. Yeah. And I was just scared of it.
That's when we've seen the effects of alcohol, drug abuse, and things like that, we get a fear. And I just a side note here, growing up, all I heard about my one grandfather, my dad's dad, was that he was an alcoholic and that he lost all the money, and all this stuff about it. And he's Irish, so like the drinking comes with the Irish part of it, right? Yeah, quite the stereotype. Yeah, from Boston or Fall River, Massachusetts, actually, and so for me, growing up, there was kind of a fear of alcohol. We never had alcohol around the family. And I remember one summer, my grandparents had a place down in Cape May Point, New Jersey, and we were down there. And we got down there for our 2 weeks, however long we were going to be there, and we're putting food away and stuff like that. And there's beer in the fridge. And as a young boy, I'm, who's drinking beer, doing this one. Well, it was my grandfather's, and I don't think I ever remember seeing him drinking a beer, even out on the boat. But you get these preconceived ideas about addictive behavior and what it can do for you. And instead of looking at it rationally, you build a fear up in your own mind. And so that kept me away from a lot of things, but it's one of those, that addictive behavior. And I'll be honest with you, I do my full testimony here pretty quick. People will see what my addictive behavior is. I have had an addictive personality for years. It's and when we see our parents and we see loved ones go through it, it's hard. It's really hard.
It is.
So the next topic we're going to talk about some death in the family.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you
take the reins.
Run with that. Yes.
So in the previous episode, I had mentioned that there were 2 children that the social services had reached out to my parents about. And my mom did not want to bring them into our home, and our dad did, which ultimately ended in their separation. My dad did take those children, and he adopted them by himself. Once they were adopted, they did need a lot of professional help that we were not able to give them. And I also mentioned previously that in foster care, there was a time where I was hospitalized. That's actually the time where my parents got me. They had met me once before at a play date and had heard that I had to be hospitalized, and they came to visit me and check on me, and they wanted me. They went to court and fought for me to get out of that hospital and into their care. Wow. And I think that was very traumatizing for my dad to see. I don't have a whole lot of memory of it, but I believe I was under a lot of medication. I was kind of having to be sedated because I was pretty combative. And I think that he just had this fear that that's what they would do to these children for the rest of their lives, that they would just basically dope them up and they would walk around like zombies and never really get to be who they were. So he, while they did see he go to therapy or counseling kind of like I did, they never really and truly got the deep help that they needed. So they struggled. They really did struggle. And the younger of the two was a boy. And he, I think, was doing a little bit better because he probably did not have as much memory. And unfortunately, they actually got into an accident. My dad was driving, and the three of them were all in a car together, and it went into a river. It was in the middle of the night, and he was in the back seat and was not able to get out.
Oh, wow.
So it was very hard.
That put a lot of strain on your dad?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that whole time for me, I was probably, I think I was about 18.
Okay.
Definitely not 20 yet. I was like, I don't remember exactly what age I was, but he was 12. And I was pretty young myself, and that whole time for me is kind of a blur. I don't remember a whole lot of it, and you just don't think that those things happen to you or anyone in your family. You may hear about them, it was April Fool's Day. So the anniversary is actually coming up, but I just remember waking up and seeing all of this on my phone. I had been getting phone calls and text messages and thinking, when my sister talked to me on the phone, I said, that's not funny. This isn't funny. You know, you just don't think it's real. So it was definitely hard. And I had moved out of my father's home my junior in high school. So it had been a few years since I had lived at home with him. I think I had been gone for 2 years at the time. And I felt a lot of guilt because I didn't spend that time with him. I hadn't had a whole lot of contact with him because of my relationship with my father. So I felt like I had missed out on the last 2 years of his life, and things may have been different if I had been there. And yeah, so it was a struggle to deal with, and I'm sure it was even harder for my brother and sisters who were biologically related to him.
And we have a tendency as human beings to, what could I have done, or what should I have done, or what would I have done? Had I been there more often, had I been, yeah, we have a tendency to, we talk a lot of stories in our own minds that if I had only done this,
only ifs.
The only ifs, and that just doesn't work. So, so that just had to be hard, the death of a sibling. And
absolutely.
And your father passed away?
Yes. So a few years later, my father did pass, and I believe I was 21 at the time, so this is only a couple of years later. And it was natural causes. He had a heart attack. And my brother called me, and I, at the time, had moved to East Texas. I was a few hours away from where my family lived. I was at a Christmas party. He called me, and I just left right away and drove down. My husband, who is now my husband, we were dating at the time. He drove with me. He didn't think I was in the shape to be driving that far in the middle of the night. So he drove me and stayed with my family in the hospital. And that was traumatic in a different way. So because he had a heart attack and the ambulance came, they weren't sure how long his brain went without oxygen. So they weren't sure if he was going to be able to come back. So we spent 2 weeks in the hospital hoping that his activity would return. And of course, nurses and doctors tell you we're hoping for the best.
Yes,
and unfortunately, that was not the case for him. So we did have to remove him from all of the machines and let him pass naturally. So that was different because it was a little bit more drawn out. It didn't happen instantly. So it was still a shock.
So now I've been in that situation where we've withdrawn life support as a chaplain and with family. And was that a family decision? Was that how
yes,
did that
it
decision
was.
come?
So he had an older brother who is still alive, and him and his wife were there. My dad had one biological son. They were there, and I'm still very close with him and his wife and their child. They were there. All of our adopted siblings were there, and the doctor came in and told us that the chances of him improving were very, very, very slim, and that his recommendation was to go ahead and remove him. So we all talked about it and, just said that we need to be in agreement. We're not going to make this decision if any one of us is left behind. And I was probably the last one.
Okay.
I was probably the last one.
Daddy's girl?
I'm the youngest, definitely am. I'm a daddy's girl. And he had walked all of my other sisters down the aisle.
Oh.
So I was the only one left. Yeah, that was hard.
Yeah, that is a hard thing to get over. making those decisions, and I will encourage y'all out there, have the documents in effect so that you take the decisions out of your children's hands and out of your spouse's hands so that they don't have to deal with that. You talk to any one of the local hospitals or any attorney, and it can draw those papers up. It's real easy to do, so that if, God forbid, you're in a situation where a decision has to be made, you have already made that. Also make a decision on organ donation. I'm going to put that plug in there. You have no idea how many lives your body can save through organ donation. It's phenomenal. Anyway, I digress a little bit. I apologize there.
That's okay.
I like to get my plugs in for things that's near and dear to my heart, especially when I saw so much of that in the hospital in Cheyenne.
Right.
So some happy times were coming.
Yes. We talked about death. Now we can talk about life.
There you go.
So yeah, Jacob and I mentioned that he got to be there. He did not get to meet my dad, unfortunately, but he did get to be there. And later we were engaged. We got married, and
wait. There has to be a dating process, a timeline, something like that in there.
It was actually pretty short. I was pretty sure. I remember coming home from my first date, and I was actually living with my best friend and her family, and her mom was in the bathroom, and I was in the shower, and she just said, how did it go? And Jacob actually worked for her, and I worked with the same company, so she knew him, and I just said, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but we're gonna get married.
Oh wow. Okay.
I knew our first date, and she said, you're not crazy. I knew the same thing with my husband. So
okay.
She was she definitely led me back to the Lord as well, and she felt that this was the Lord's path for us too, so that was comforting.
Yeah. Always good to have that validation. Yeah. So and so wedding, what were the plans?
We only dated for a few months. We dated for like 3 months. We got engaged. We did stay engaged for a little over a year. And then we had our wedding. We got married in New Orleans. We actually had a huge wedding planned, and our venue canceled on us 2 weeks before.
Oh, no.
So we got to figure it out on the spot. We had planned to honeymoon in New Orleans because we love it there. So we decided, let's just get married there.
Okay.
So we got married under a beautiful tree. It's called the Tree of Life. And it was just like our immediate family, so just our parents and siblings. It was gorgeous, and looking back, I'd do it that way from the get-go.
Okay.
It was so intimate. It was perfect.
But that was you were living in Texas at the time, right?
I was living in Texas, and we went back home to Texas after our honeymoon. We were there for about a year, and my husband had always known he wanted to live in Florida, so he had told me that, and his dad accepted a position here.
Okay.
So he decided it was time to go ahead and move, and we had talked about it and prayed about it. So about 6 months after his dad moved, we did as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were all on board with Texas to Florida?
I knew I wanted to live somewhere else.
Okay.
I didn't want to stay in Texas my whole life, and I didn't really have a particular state that I cared as much about, and I knew how much he cared about Florida. So I was like, okay, let's try it.
Okay. And
I like it a lot.
Okay.
I miss Texas sometimes, but I mostly miss the people.
The people, that's always it. I look at Wyoming, people say, do you want to go back? No, because the wind right now, the wind's ripping your face off up there, right? But it's the people. It is always the people.
Absolutely.
So what's your favorite thing about Florida and where we're at right now?
The beaches.
Oh, yeah.
I did grow up close to Galveston, but it's not the same. The beaches here are great, and we're definitely like a water family. Anything water related, water sports, we love it. So being able to do that on my husband's days off or just after church, it's very nice.
And Jacob supports you in your ministry.
He absolutely does.
I know that you guys came out to a Second Friday event. He went out, helped you set up and everything else, and help take care of Ray, which brings us to
Ray. Yes, he is so sweet. So Jacob and I were married for a little over a year when we moved out here to Florida, and we had decided that we wanted to start trying for a child at around a year, and it had been just a few months in Texas. And if you haven't ever done that, it's very stressful. It doesn't just happen like you think it's going to. It takes some work. So we decided to take a break from that to deal with moving, to find a house, to find jobs, to get our things in order. And the Lord decided that was when he wanted to give us Ray. Yeah. So we found out we were pregnant. We found a house, and we went ahead and moved. We both had found jobs by the time we moved into our home. And COVID hit. Yeah, right. So COVID was probably, Jacob and I have only been married for 3 years together for 4-ish, almost 5. So COVID has probably been the biggest trial for our marriage, and then to throw in a first pregnancy and trying to figure out how to be parents together while you're in a brand new state and you're kind of isolated. You have almost no family or friends. His parents had bought a house an hour away from us. So it was a hard season. It was a very hard season. And I'm looking back, I'm pretty sure I had prepartum depression, but I didn't know what it was. I'd never even heard of it. I didn't really know how to ask for help because I didn't think I had anything to be sad about. Right. I had all these great things. But he was here. I had a really hard pregnancy. I was very, very sick the whole time, and I had a really difficult birth, but it got so much better once he was here. Yep. So much better. So.
And you learned that you probably should have asked for pain drugs.
Yes, I did. So I did not want an epidural, and we didn't know until my due date, but I had preeclampsia. So I was rushed to an emergency room, and they basically told me they thought that they wanted to do a C-section. And I said I did not want that unless it was absolutely necessary. If it's necessary for the safety of both of us, go ahead. But so I spent 3 days on Pitocin, which is a labor-inducing drug. It gives you contractions 24/7. And I was also on cervical ripeners. So that basically just makes your womb real ready for baby to come. So I was in a lot of pain. And I waited until the very last hour to get my epidural. Last chance. You have to have it now or never.
Now or never. Oh,
yep.
Okay.
So I finally did it, and I should have done it earlier. But that's okay. He's here, and he's healthy.
He's a fun little boy to be around.
He's very fun. He's 1.5 now. He's getting so big.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a whole lot of joy for both of us.
So as going forward, Jacob supports you in your ministry. He supports you in your business. And what are your plans as far as Ray is concerned? Are you going to try and homeschool? Are you going to try and...
No.
Okay, there you go.
I do not want to be a teacher.
COVID taught you that, huh?
COVID absolutely taught me that. But really, something I heard from a pastor a long time ago, he told me that his job was not to get his kids into Harvard. It was to get them into heaven. Yes. And I think about that every day. So I think my most important ministry is at home. And that's our family. And I'm grateful to have Jacob be the lead of us spiritually and in every other direction as well. But so that's my focus. As long as he loves the Lord, then the rest is up to him.
Okay, there you go. Well, I want to thank you for being our guest on Today is My Favorite Day. We have talked with Alexus over the last couple of days about her journey from foster care to adoption to some death in the family, addictions, divorce, her marriage, and baby Ray. And you can come and see us here at the Harbor Church. Alexus and baby Ray and Jacob here almost every week.
I know. I should have brought him. He's a good. He's a good incentive.
Good. Yeah, he's a good distraction too. They wouldn't be focused so much on us,
true.
right?
That's true.
So, anyway, we want to thank you for listening. And one last thought: today is my favorite day because
I get to go home to my baby.
There you go. Today is my favorite day because I am alive and breathing. I want to thank you all for listening. Have a great day. Be blessed. We'll see you on the next go round.
Thank you for listening to TIMFD. Today is my favorite day. The views, comments, and opinions expressed here today are those of the hosts and guests alone, and Dave and Sam are solely responsible for the content of this podcast. TIMFD, Today is My Favorite Day, is produced and directed by Alex Korn. Music is composed and performed by Chuck Vaught. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, live intentionally, and be very blessed, my friends.